Welcome everybody to the special Codebreakers Israel Update broadcast. Special.
Welcome.
And we've done one of these before, and we had a lot of fun. We did a couple of them.
Like 3 or 4,
yes,
yeah.
And so, look, with everything that's been going on lately, we felt like it was time to sit down and have a little discussion about things that have been going on and are ongoing.
Yes.
So today we're going to talk to you about Syria and Turkey and Israel.
Yes.
And some of the things that we have to share with you are quite fascinating. This is going to be an ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
Because things are changing from day to day, and we're keeping our eyes on this and praying about it. And so we love to keep you informed. And so I think we'll start with what recently happened in Turkey and Syria.
Yes.
With the Kurds and President Trump's decision to withdraw the troops, which he's come under great criticism and scrutiny for, even with people like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, who are usually have his back.
Yeah.
A lot of people are frightened by this and unsure about this. But the benefit that we have is that we have God.
Yes.
God who's given us a glimpse into the future, and via my dad, who was a great prophet. Anybody
Yes.
who may not know, my father was Clement, and he was one of the greatest prophets of our generation, if I say so myself. And I am biased, but
Undoubtedly.
And
I mean, it's you can't really argue with it.
not to mention the biblical side of it, which
Yes.
my mother will share with us later on.
Yes.
So you're going to get a full spectrum
Yes.
view of what's going on. So
And I think the thing to just remember too is that President Trump does also come under fire and scrutiny pretty much for anything he does.
well, yes, that's true.
So, there's obviously always going to be, different opinions and different ways to look at things, and there's going to be multiple perspectives. But I think the one thing that we've seen that's run clearly from the moment he announced he was running for president is that the media has hated him with a passion.
Oh, yes.
And so,
I've never seen anything so unfair in my life.
yes, and so that's just something also to consider, that what we're hearing consistently, repetitively, he is always under scrutiny. It's kind of like no matter what he does, he's going to come under fire. So that's just something to keep in mind as we do look at this and look at kind of it's sort of like he was caught between a rock and a hard place in a lot of ways.
I feel that that is the case, and we also have to remember the President of the United States of America knows a lot more than we do.
Definitely.
And a lot more than the news media does, and a lot more than a lot of people in Washington, D.C. do. And so sometimes we need to give things a little bit of time. Now, I have to admit that when I heard that he was suddenly pulling the troops the way he was, I was upset.
So was I. I was nervous and upset.
I know that that's where ISIS is being held. I know that they had a great victory in defeating the caliphate there. I also know that Trump has been battling with European countries refusing to take back the members of ISIS who are being held in the prisons there.
Yes.
But they are citizens of these different countries. I don't think it's not only Europe. It's
No, it's all
Eastern
over,
Europe
yes,
as well.
yes.
And I feel that perhaps Trump is pushing back a bit and saying, look, America shouldn't be
Solely responsible.
solely responsible for what happens to them now.
Yes.
And it's my understanding that on the 6th of October, and I do have some notes in front of me, so you'll see me look at this because this is very complicated.
Yes.
It's much more complicated than I expected it to be. And I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you're interested enough, you can research this. Basically what happened was there's a 450 kilometer border between Turkey and Syria, and there's 100 kilometers, which is east of the Euphrates, which is the area that's vulnerable, I suppose, right now. Now, I will tell a quick story. We knew some soldiers who were militia, so they weren't part of the government. They fought with alongside Kurds to fight ISIS, and it was a group of women Kurds who were virgins. And ISIS was terrified of them because if a virgin killed one of them, they didn't get their 70 virgins in heaven. So they were terrified of these women, and they were Kurds. Now, let me explain something about the Kurds. The Kurds are not one group. There's all these different sects of Kurds. The reason that they were unable to establish a state in, I believe it was northern Iraq, I could be wrong about that, was because the Kurds themselves could not unify. So when you hear Trump going up there and talking about the PKK and not all of them are angels, he's actually right about that, in that there are some groups of Kurds who have implemented Sharia law, who have done terrible things to Christians. So, and I'm not making any judgment on the Kurds, I'm just explaining that it's not just one group of people, the Kurds, who have been betrayed. It's very, very complex. And
There's factions.
So the more I looked into it, the more I started to understand how difficult this situation was. So Trump gets on the phone with Erdogan on the 6th of October. Now, we are certainly no fan of Erdogan. And my father prophesied about him and said, who is this man who calls himself a god? He said the same of Putin.
He did.
And so we certainly are not a fan of Erdogan, and we do not trust him.
No.
But apparently Trump had a phone call with him. Erdogan told Trump that he was doing this spring of peace, is what he's calling it, to secure his border. And it's very complicated because it all goes into the Sunni Shia
There's a lot
thing.
of it's factionalized.
And the interests of Iran and Palestine, and so it's very complex.
But at the end of the day, Trump adopted a very hardline attitude towards Erdogan, which is something we didn't see under Obama.
That's true.
Is that, the difference in rhetoric, and even though people might mock him, he's hardline and he is keeping the promises he made in a lot of ways. And he is also not backing off when it comes to Muslim leaders of other nations.
Yes, and again, he ran on the promise that he would remove American troops, especially an unnecessary war. So now that the caliphate is defeated, he would have pulled out anyway. The criticism is coming against him in the way in which he did it and why he did it so quickly. I suspect he wants to deal with this now, as opposed to later on coming closer to an election where he's dealing with a witch hunt, impeachment, and all these things going on. Perhaps he just wanted to take care of this now before it escalated into something that also could have had our troops stuck there for longer. And really, it's a civil war between Syria and Turkey. The only concern there is the ISIS fighters escaping. There's been misinformation in the media, especially the mainstream media, which is awful. Showed footage of people shooting at a shooting range in Kentucky, and said it was Syria right now. So be careful about when you get information, just believing everything you hear, because it isn't actually all accurate. You know that there's a problem right now with our mainstream media. But one thing that people did do was they compared Trump pulling out, 50 to 60 troops?
Yes. With the intent of taking
out 1,000. So how many people is this? 50 or 60 people?
Yeah.
I think
that's what it was, yeah.
Who wouldn't have been able to do much anyway. So I don't know about this green light thing that Trump was giving them the green light. I don't think so. I think he was just seeing the complexity of this and thinking, if I don't pull them out now, this could get a lot worse later on, and then we're going to get stuck there.
And he did send this tweet out. I think, he sent this tweet out when people complained about the 50 to 60 troops being pulled out, and he said this. He said, "I am the only person who can fight for the safety of our troops and bring them home from the ridiculous and costly endless wars and be scorned. Democrats always liked that position until I took it. Democrats always liked walls until I built them. Do you see what's happening here?"
That's a very, very interesting and true statement. I mean, for how many years have we heard about how can America be the police of the world, and we shouldn't be involved in these wars? And even when Obama removed the troops, and this is what I was going to say, what happened with Iraq was completely different. You actually can't compare them.
You can't.
Because with Iraq, the United States invaded Iraq, created a new government, and then was supporting that government there. And then when Obama came in, he pulled the troops out, which left abruptly, pulled the troops out, which left a vacuum. This situation is a civil war between Syria and Turkey, and oil and land and Sunnis and Shias and different sects of Kurds, and it's much more complex. And we were not there to govern Syria, or the Kurds, or anything like that. So I think that this is not quite a fair analysis.
It's not a fair comparison.
Now, one thing I do want you to hear is a prophecy that my dad gave, which I found to be quite interesting. This is from September 14th of 2013 on the Den broadcast. And just listen to what my father prophesied here.
God says, do not look at what is happening in Syria and America and Russia, China. Don't look and say, God will do nothing because America will stand still. God says, you don't even know what I have within Syria. You don't even know what I have within Iran. You don't even know what I have and what I've prepared already internally. You see, people, seem to think that unless America gets involved, unless Israel attacks, which is very important at the time, it's that nothing will happen. But God says, don't ever forget that when Jehoshaphat stood and he got the people to praise, and he got them to praise in the presence of the enemies, that God sent ambushments against those nations so that they attacked each other. God said, watch and see what I do, for the noose is prepared for Syria. The noose is prepared for the nations in the Middle East that have defied the Lord God Most High.
Okay, so now that you've heard this, that my father prophesied, I thought the interesting part about that was where he spoke about America will stand still.
Yeah.
And this is basically what is happening now. And he specifically said, don't look at what is happening in Syria, America, Russia, China. Those are major countries being looked at today, this week, this month, right now, in the season we're in. God's basically saying, we have this expectation that Israel and America are going to take care of all these things, but God's actually the one taking care of it. And I want to take this opportunity to say that, is that, yes, my father prophesied Donald Trump.
Yes.
And I do believe that he's the person that God anointed to be in office to do this job, that he's the right person to do this job. But always remember that Trump is not God. Trump is not perfect. He's not always going to make the exact perfect choices and decisions like any other human being. And our reliance has to be on God above Trump. And we must not allow that to be swayed because God called Trump. Now everything Trump says and does is right. We look to God first. We have to look at what he's doing and discern and pray for him. Pray for him to make the right choices.
There's a great scripture in Isaiah 2:22 that says, "Stop trusting in man who has but a breath in his nostrils. Of what account is he?"
Yes.
At the end of the day, the decisions Trump makes that are right, we give God glory for that. But he is not God. Yeah. And, there's another scripture that kind of comes to mind that's in Ecclesiastes that says, "It is good to hold on to the one and not let go of the other. A man who is wise avoids all extremes." That's in Ecclesiastes 7:14, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
And so really what this is saying is God is saying, we need to actually sort of be mindful and peaceful, I think, when thinking of these things. And you see people going to either extreme, where some people hate Donald Trump so much that I genuinely think that if he did somehow miraculously cure cancer, people would shout, "Oh, he's taken jobs away from the doctors."
It's actually demonic.
There's people that hate him that much, whereas there's other people who think that every single thing that he says and does is perfect. And, that what comes to mind, it is good to hold on to the one and not let go of the other. A man who is wise avoids all extremes. And so I think that's why we have to be praying. We have to be watching. We have to be seeking God in this time. And, of course, our stance will never change that we stand for and with Israel. That is undeniable. That will never change.
And I think that there's been a little bit of fear about Israel and would he do that to Israel? But he actually, I was watching his rally in Dallas the other day, and he very specifically said I forget his statement because it's just coming to me right now. I'm just remembering it. But he said that he stood with Israel, that he had recognized
Jerusalem as the capital.
Jerusalem as the capital.
Moved the embassy across.
And
recognized the Golan Heights,
Heights
as Israel's sovereign territory.
Right. So I don't think you can compare them right now.
No.
I don't think that Trump is going to turn his back on Israel at all. He sees the strength, and it's only to our benefit to remain allies.
Yes,
and he's made some very strong, decisive
He's done
decisions.
more for Israel than any other sitting president.
And my dad prophesied, watch what God does in Israel and America at the same time, which takes us to
something that makes me quite excited. Is this?
Yeah, this is where you're going to get excited.
Yes.
Okay, so do you want to read this prophecy? Okay, she's going to read you just a snippet of a
little
prophecy.
snippet. So this was on February the 21st, 2015. It was also, I think, it was a Den broadcast, I think, and he said, Israel, when they vote and God says, there shall be a change and many will weep, but I will take Netanyahu, whether ruler or not, and they shall call to him, for he is not just a king, he is a prophet. Now, there's a lot of turmoil. There still isn't a decisive outcome from the election. We've been covering the election over the past, number of months, this whole year. When there was the first election, we did the whole Eye on the Election campaign.
Right.
Then it happened again on September 17th, where for the first time since 1948, there were 2 elections that took place in a year because there have been so many factions and divisions. And so right now, Netanyahu's future, it is unstable. It is uncertain. But what this prophecy kind of gives me just clarity in my heart and just confidence is that he's saying there will be a change, many will weep, but whether ruler or not, they will call to him because he's not just a king, he is a prophet, which shows me again that God is going to use Mr. Netanyahu, whether he's in the role of prime minister or not, because he is also a prophet. But this brings us to our next point.
Yes. So I'm going to tell you a story quickly.
Yes.
So it was, I believe, 2013, 2004, it must have been 2014. I'm trying to think of which child I was pregnant with.
Yes.
I was pregnant with one of them, and I went to the mall with my dad.
Mamila Mall.
And, no, in America.
Oh.
We were in America. And
so it wasn't in Israel?
No, I hadn't been to Israel yet.
Yes, of course.
So what happened was he was going to be meeting with the mayor of Jerusalem. He was very excited about it.
Yes.
And I went to the mall with him. And he said, I have to get him a gift. God told me I have to give him a gift. And so I said, okay, Dad, well, I mean, I don't know what you give to the mayor of Jerusalem.
Yes.
So let's go look around. And there was this little shop that made things out of crystal.
Yes.
Jewelry and ornaments. I ended up getting a little pen that day that had these little crystals, and it was pink. I loved it. Anyway, he ended up buying him an eagle.
Yes.
A crystal eagle that he was going to give to him when he went to Israel.
Yes.
And then he went and met with him. What's his name?
Nebakat.
I have a hard time pronouncing his name. Nebakat.
Nebakat.
It's beautiful, actually.
Yes, it is.
But he prophesied, my father did, after meeting with, I believe it was after he met with him, and told him that he would be the prime minister of Israel.
Yes, but this is the thing. So in 2011, during the trip that changed my life forever, our 2011 God TV Clement Israel is Forever tour, when we went and we had about 1,000 people from all over the world, best trip of my life, and the mayor at the time, Nebakat, was in attendance, and we had the most amazing time. And the next year, Kim went again and met with him privately. And when he went in to meet with Nebakat, what had kind of been said was that he was very focused on Jerusalem, and that when his time as mayor was up, he would sort of be leaving politics. But Kim, of course, being Kim, then hearing from God and doing what he did, went into the room, met with him, and he actually said to him, you're going to be prime minister. And we've got a clip of Kim speaking about this just after he came out of meeting with Nebakat and telling him, you're going to be prime minister one day, that we're going to show you in a minute. But this is the crazy thing. With all the tension going on in Israel, with everything going on, these indictments that are coming against Netanyahu, this in this last month, what it looks like is that Nebuchadnezzar is going to be running to become the leader of the Likud party, which is Benjamin Netanyahu's party. Now, at the time that Kim said this to him, his intention was to leave politics when he was done with being the mayor of Jerusalem, and this was back in 2012, 2013. But now here we are in 2019, and what Kim said to him, and it wasn't like he was up on a stage somewhere prophesying. He prophesied to him in a room alone where there wasn't a camera and said, "I've seen that you're going to be the prime minister." And now here we are in 2019, and Nebuchadnezzar is actually one of the candidates to run for to be the leader of the Likud party, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me.
So he might end up being the prime minister?
Yes, he could well end up. So this isn't something we're going to watch, but I want you to go watch that.
Yes.
We're going to show this clip to you right now of Kim speaking outside the mayor's office back in, I think it was at the end of 2012 or beginning of 2013. So just watch this for a moment, bearing in mind that we're here all these years later and that this prophecy that Kim gave him could well be coming to pass before our eyes very soon. So why don't you go ahead and watch this?
The most important thing about this meeting with the mayor is the fact that we've developed a friendship over the years. They don't trust a lot of people, sadly even Christians, because many Christians are on a mission just to convert the Jews. And this problem has caused a distance between many ministries that come in. This is what I felt. First of all, I walked in there and we decided to film right there in the foyer of his office. I also reminded him of the concerts that we've done, the prophetic concerts, starting in 2008 on Mount Carmel, 2011 in Jerusalem. And I gave him one of the mantles, which was Israel is forever, and quoted Am Israel Chai, which means Israel will live forever. And while we were chatting, of course, he was saying a few things about Jerusalem, and he's been committed to Jerusalem since a child. His 3 daughters are in the army, in the military, fighting in Israel. I felt, and I have felt this for a long time, that he is going to be the prime minister. Of course, he rejected that because he said, "I'm focused on Jerusalem," which I really, really appreciate. With all that in mind, I want you to pray as well for God's will to be done. We are supporters and friends of Israel. That's it. It's never going to change. We are friends, and you are friends of Israel too.
So now, I mean, all you have to do is look at that and go, Kim went in, prophesied to Nebuchadnezzar, who at the time actually rejected it and said, no, I'm going to be getting out of politics and I'm very focused on Jerusalem. But now here we sit in 2019, and that is looking like it's coming to pass before our eyes. Now, of course, we don't know if Nebuchadnezzar is going to actually take the candidacy right now, but he is still a very young man.
Yeah, he is.
And so that just makes me incredibly excited, because Kim prophesied about Trump in 2007, and here we are in 2019, and, Trump is now the president, which at the time would have seemed absolutely absurd. But now he prophesied this about Nebuchadnezzar, and yes, it just really does go to show that God is firmly in control of history, and that is a reason to celebrate.
And when I think about Netanyahu, I do love him so. And when I think about Netanyahu, the verse comes to my mind, everything is beautiful in its time. And I think that God puts us in positions for seasons to make sure that his will is performed and fulfilled. And so I think, we have a lot more to discuss here with this. But we also need to watch what's going on. Yeah. And so we're going to wait a little while, see what happens, and then come back to you, because my dad said some very, very interesting things on the 20th of March 2014, which is the same day that he prophesied ISIS. Yes. So this was before ISIS emerged. It was right after this. My dad prophesied this, that ISIS emerged. There's some very interesting things that my dad prophesied in regards to Russia, Iran, Syria, and what was going to happen there. But I am going to hold that one back, because we want to watch and see what happens. And that's what we do here with Codebreakers. And I like to do this with you, where we do the Codebreakers Israel together. Yeah. So we're going to do it again. Expect us to come back in a few weeks and give you another update and let you know from more of a spiritual and prophetic perspective, as opposed to your news media, which you can't 100% trust anymore. Definitely. But someone we can trust is our dear friend Doobie, who is in Israel right now, and we'd like to hear some of his thoughts and
the latest kind of thoughts and feelings.
He's
Israel.
over there. He
Yes.
can go right to the border of Syria. So let's hear from Doobie, and then after that, my mother wanted to share some very interesting things in regards to what's happening and biblical prophecy. So thank you for joining Christy and I.
Thank you.
And let's hear from Doobie, and then we'll hear from my mom. We love you all, and we'll see you next time.
Shalom warriors, Shalom House of Destiny, Shalom Israel partner and Abraham friends, and welcome to Israel. Today I want to give you an update about what's happening in the northern fronts inside Syria right now. As you're well aware and you understand that there was an attack, an invasion by Turkey into the northern parts of Syria when the Americans retreated from the areas where they were together with the Kurds in the northern part of Syria, the Kurds that helped America through the years of fighting against ISIS and defeating them from Iraq and from Syria and putting them inside prisons. The Turkish government, together with their leader Erdogan, decided that since there is so many years of bad blood between Kurds and Turkish government, as the Turkish government, together with the Iraqi government, together with the Syrian government, all the times tries to oppress the Kurds, which is the only nation I think right now in the world literally that has like 30 million people that has no land of their own, and they've been refugees and moving from one place to the other all these years. The Kurds had a wonderful ally, and it was the United States of America, but for some kind of political reasons that are not yet totally unfolded, the Americans decided that they don't want to stay in northern Syria. They want to move out of northern Syria, and this was as if they gave the okay for Erdogan to go and go after the Kurds. And we know that for Erdogan, all the Kurds considered to be terrorists, even though there is some organizations that literally tries to get some of their own freedoms and gain their land back. Unfortunately, the Turkish government wants to kick them out of that land over there, push them away 30 kilometers within Syria right now. And what was happening is that invasion actually created a huge resentment throughout the Europeans and of course within America as well, in Israel, because in Israel we were understanding that maybe something's changed with the American policy towards the Middle East when they haven't really retaliated for what happened in Saudi Arabia when the Iranians attacked, when they're moving out of Syria right now. A lot of the Israelis are really afraid that maybe America, as a big ally of Israel, will also abandon us if we're going to face an attack with Iran or Hezbollah or with the Hamas. Obviously, I do believe that we have different relationships with Israel and the United States of America, and this friendship and this alignment and this unity will stay forever. That's at least what I believe and what I feel. But still, there's a lot of people here and definitely within the high-ranked military officers who are saying that Israel has to prepare for the day when America is out of the Middle East. And as we can see now, actually what's happening is that other powers and other forces are creeping inside the Middle East. We can see that Iran is taking over a lot of influence within Syria. We can see definitely Russia is the chef who cooks this whole story over there. You know that Erdogan yesterday went to meet with President Putin in Sochi. And even though the Americans were able to call some kind of a ceasefire and save a lot of the Kurds from a massacre, which was an amazing move by the president and Mike Pence, is to talk with Erdogan and to talk with the Kurds and to make some kind of an arrangement that the Kurds will retreat their soldiers from that area so there'll be no massacre. Now the Syrian army is infiltrating and entering back into the areas which were under the control of the United States and the Kurds. And we can see also that Putin has just got all this on a tray like a ripe fruit for him to be able to go together with his big allies, the Russians and the Iranians. And now it's becoming also the Turks. becoming big allies of Russia. The Turks, which were a country part of NATO, one of the biggest allies of the United States in the region, is slowly was moving more and more towards leaning on Russia. And unfortunately, we saw in the beginning that they were buying anti-aircraft batteries from the Russians, even though they are members of NATO. And now we see that the coordination between the Turks and the Russians is at the highest levels ever. Erdogan was invited to the palace of Putin in Sochi, where they sat together and actually planned the future of Syria and northern Syria. And we know that within the last 7 years or so, 8 years, there's over 3.5 million refugees who moved from Syria's civil war into Turkey. He wants to transfer them back into that zone that he will evacuate from the national and the natural people that lived in this area, the Kurds. So we're seeing now the growing influence of Russia in the region. It's not only that it started with Crimea, which is on the verge of Europe, and the world done nothing besides some what we call sanctions, like financial sanctions or economical sanctions, that doesn't bother the Russians too much. Now we see that he's gaining more and more power over Syria, is gaining more and more power over the Middle East now. When America is coming out, Russia is entering in. And on the other hand, we see also just something which is a quick update for you to know, that this week is also Putin is also calling a huge summit for 47 African nations to be in Sochi with him, led together with Sisi, who's the president of Egypt. Egypt, that traditionally was the biggest ally of the United States of America in the Middle East, together with Israel. Now we can see they are getting closer and closer to Russia as well. So we can see that Russia is starting to gain more and more influence, not over what used to be Eastern Europe and frightening the Poles in Poland, and frightening, of course, the Ukrainians, and seeing them taking over a lot in the Middle East, and in coordination with Turkey, in coordination with Iran. And now we're seeing them also eyeing their way into Africa, where they want to take the hegemony of the northern and the Western world, where they're going to take over a little bit more of the African cake, where now it's dominantly controlled mainly by United States, Britain, and China. China is a big power in Africa now. We can see that it's going to be challenged now by the Russians, who wants to gain more and more and deeper influence within bigger areas in the globe. So everything is around this area here. The game in the Middle East determines what would be the game throughout the whole world. And we're seeing some kind of a direction where this world is going now. It's actually a decline of the big democracies in the world because of the paralyzing powers of the parliaments. That, look what's happening now in America, where the parliament, of course, the American Congress is paralyzing the president. They go against every decision that he wants to make. They want even to lead an impeachment against him. We see what happens in Israel, where the big democracy in the Middle East is unable to form a coalition because of the powers and the growing powers of the parliament. Look what happens in Great Britain now with Boris Johnson and Brexit, that his own parliament is not voting together with the agreements that he's gained. There is something happening here in this world where the tyrants of this world are getting, all the tyrants in this world are getting together, gaining more power, more influence. Look what's happening now as Russia and China backing North Korea against the West. Look what's happening, as I said, in Africa now, the infiltration of those superpowers of the tyrants like China, like Russia, into Africa. Look what's happening now in the Middle East, as our democracies are almost crippled and wounded by our system. Those tyrants that has to answer to no one are getting more and more of the global cake, and they're going to get more and more of the economy as the things will unfold for them, when they're going to gain super control over the resources of this world, in the Middle East, the oil, and you go to Africa, there's oil and gold and uranium, and there is a growing move in the world right now where tyrants are going after the resources, after the natural resources, and us, our democracies, the people that seeks freedom and seeks God, because superpower is given to parliaments, we can't have any policy to move forward and prevail. We are handcuffed, we are crippled, and we're losing control over key points in this world. So we need definitely to pray for our democracy to prevail, for our way that cares for the sick, cares for human rights, cares for the environment, wants this world to be a better place, and we are under a huge attack by those demonic powers of tyrants who wants to take all the resources, who are so corrupt, and they lead their own policies to take over the world, and we should not let them do that, because I believe that our methods, our system, our care for the others, our care for our friends, our care for the weak and the needy ones, this is the way that needs to lead this world, and not the way of the tyrants who are actually worshiping power, and they are just preventing the world to go to a place where we care for each other. So it's here, it's global, it started here in the Middle East, where America started to creep out and to walk out of the Middle East. It gives so much more empowerment and so much more encouragement to those tyrants and superpowers of evil to infiltrate and to take over. So please pray for our leaders, pray for a good government in Israel, pray for the strength of America and the leader of America, pray for England, pray for France, pray for the nations that are literally democratical places, democracies in the world. Look what happened just the elections now this week with Canada, where Trudeau, which was the star, is losing power now in the last elections, and he might have to form a minority government, which will also cripple his parliament and will prevent even Canada and Canada's economy to go in a place where they can do more for the weak and more for the needy ones. So there's a global move right now of the tyrants and those superpowers of evil against our compromising, our loving societies of democracy, and we should stand up and understand that every land that you desert gives them another key point to take over more and more of the world. I love you a lot, Doobie. Keep praying together with us as we're going to give you updates and our thoughts. Bye.
Now that you've heard from our Codebreakers and Israel Update teams, I want to share with you some biblical prophecy that is relevant for today's world. God's ancient plans are coming to pass before our eyes. He's in control and sees the end from the beginning. There are countless Old Testament prophecies that have already come to pass. We can't look at all of them, but there are a few I would like to share. The first prophecy is in Genesis 3 verse 15. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. This prophecy came to pass when Jesus died on the cross. Isaiah 53 is the most accurately descriptive prophecy about the death of Christ. Israel becoming a nation in 1948 after 2,000 years without a homeland was a literal fulfillment of Isaiah 66. Israel was born in a day, just like Isaiah prophesied. Then there are the prophecies about God bringing the people of Israel back to the land after a long time of exile. Ezekiel 28. Thus says the Lord God, when I've gathered the house of Israel from the peoples among whom they are scattered, and I'm hallowed in them in the sight of the Gentiles, then they will dwell in their own land, which I gave to my servant Jacob. And they shall dwell safely there, build houses and plant vineyards. Yes, they will dwell securely. When I execute judgments on all those around them who despise them, then they will know that I am the Lord their God. In Zechariah 12, God also said that Israel will become a burdensome stone to all peoples. We can certainly see this in the world today with the rise of anti-Semitism and hatred towards the nation of Israel that is undeniable. Zechariah 12, in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the peoples of the earth will be gathered together against it. These portions of scripture, along with Isaiah 35 and Zechariah 12, have been fulfilled in our day since 1948. The fact that the Jews are back in the land of Israel again is a clear fulfillment of many prophecies given thousands of years ago. I would like to mention a prophecy concerning Damascus, which is the oldest inhabited city in the world today. It has never been uninhabited. Because of this, we know that this specific prophecy has not happened yet. This is what Isaiah says. The burden against Damascus, behold, Damascus will cease from being a city, and it will be a ruinous heap. God, through Isaiah, tells us what will happen to Syria and how it will end. Then behold, at eventide, trouble, and before the morning he is no more. This is the portion of those who plunder us, and the lot of those who rob us. This verse indicates a devastating outcome to Damascus, Syria. Then there's the Ezekiel 38 prophecy, which lists all the nations to see on the world stage today. Russia, Turkey, and Iran are three key nations in the end times. It is so important for us to be aware of the times in which we are living and to carefully study what the Bible tells us through prophecy about what is going to take place at the end of days. We're living in a world of chaos where there seems to be no hope, but I want to tell you that there is hope. God is in the process of ultimately redeeming mankind. John tells us in chapter 3, verse 16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life." You're justified, you're saved from the penalty of sin, just as if you never sinned, is the first part of what I want to tell you today. Sanctification comes after salvation. This is where overcoming and good works fit into God's plan. We at the House of Destiny are committed to bringing you biblical truth in today's world. Thank you for joining us today for this special broadcast. To stay up to date with everything on our House of Destiny network, make sure you download our app, available across all platforms, and connect with us on social media.
Thank you for watching the House of Destiny's YouTube channel. Please subscribe to get all of our latest content. This video was brought to you by all of our generous supporters. If you'd like to give, click the link in the description. We have new episodes every week, so stay tuned, and remember, you're somewhere in the future and you look much better than you look right now.